I don't know what progressives were in the Obama administration unless I have a different definition of what progressive is, which I may, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm struggling with this because language, I think, now is going to be the critical piece. Who's left? All of a sudden, Yossi Sargent is left? I don't, you know, I could be right to some people. So, and I don't want to get into the definitions because we fought for this for years in hip-hop. Who is hip-hop? Who is, in my own article, I put Van is a part of the hip-hop generation. Because within hip-hop, we got right-wingers now, we got Republicans, and that's the interesting thing, that within hip-hop, you would think, you know, in a hip-hop political movement that people would be radical, that they would be like, this came from poor working class people, but everything evolves, and that's okay. I think my main problem is that the left didn't abandon Obama, they abandoned all third-party strategies. The left didn't have to go crazy and all vote for Obama. What they should have done if we had a structure is that, or if we had movements that people, we would have had enough people to vote in Obama because hell no, we didn't want Sarah Palin, you know, or whatever the hell that Republican Party looks like. I agree with that because the Green Party wasn't in a place to win an election when the Democrats are the main ones that always keep us off the ballot. So my whole thing is like, where was the little radical movement of the left that could have got the third parties their 5% so we can now begin to build third party politics? And that doesn't mean, again, a Green Party or an independent party. And that's what I think people are still not coming to terms with. And this healthcare bill, y'all, how are we as black and brown folks gonna allow a healthcare bill to pass when it specifically got a man saying up there, illegal immigrants won't be covered? I don't understand how we then begin to negotiate who has a human right or not in this country. And this is not just for Terry, this is like things I'm like, am I in the wrong here? And then lastly, you know, I'm interested in what is going on now with Vieques in Puerto Rico, because the Obama administration promised the Puerto Rican community through his own surveys that he gave back to Puerto Rican groups, that he would be letting the people begin to deal with the question of self-determination. That's obviously not gonna happen. Because in late April, the Joint Chief of Staffs or somebody had some hearing in the bottom basement of the Congress putting forth a proposal to reopen Vieques. You think that proposal hasn't hit the Obama administration? I'm just saying, I think we need to stop. We really need to come to a conclusion that no matter how dope his swagger might have been as a community organizer, he is now the face of the American empire. And this ratcheting it up and sending 50,000 more troops to Afghanistan, that's a slap in the face to everybody that voted for him. You know, and how do we deal with that? I don't know, because I agree with the panelists in the terms of where's the institution to move this kind of politic and energy forward. Those are things I'm struggling with.
I don't think that there is no left. I think there's no organized left. I think, and that there's a difference, right? We're here, we're left, right? I mean, we wouldn't even be thinking about this and challenging ourselves around this question if that wasn't something that existed. I do agree with you, Rosa, that what that means, you know, and I've had this with, like, everyone I talk to has such a different interpretation of what that means. Some people think, you know, Acorn are radical leftists, and a lot of us here know that that is absolutely not true. And well, you know, so, but these are the different, this is the spectrum that people have about this idea of what is the left, right? But I think that what I think is that the left is not organized, that there's not a base that we can rely on. You know, if you look at the way that reformist struggles organize their movements, they focus not, if you come into a, you know, an organization and you say, I'm here by myself and I'm in, you know, and I want to do something, okay, well, are you part of a church? Are you part of a union? Are you part of any type of institution? Can you mobilize people in that institution? Can you get 100 people from that institution to the next thing we're gonna do? Like, this is a different way of thinking, and it's something that's important to think about as leftists. What is our base? Is our base media institutions? Well, if they are, like, are we coming together and thinking about how many people we actually mobilize and represent through those media institutions, if that's where the radical left is, if we have, 400, if we have 1,000 viewers checking out our blog, who are these people? How can we engage them, So.
I believe everyone should step back and look at how things seem from the white fanatic perspective. They see the white republic that they built falling out of their hands. They see America losing its preeminent global position in 2 losing wars, in Latin America falling out of position, in Fidel Castro dying a hero in Latin America, and Chavez laughing his ass off. They see their empire disintegrating. Right, and this is part of the thing, is I don't think we're going to be meeting people's day-to-day needs, and I don't think we have to help this capitalist system, which has met the needs of American working people on the backs of third world plantations for my whole lifetime. We don't have to help that. We have to help bring this government down. We have to help destroy this system, and that requires increasing the alienation that working class and oppressed people feel. The way change is going to happen in this country is through the destruction of what we call the United States of America, and we're not going to do it. It's happening because grand centripetal forces are doing it on its own. When Obama says that there will not be health care for illegal immigrants, and I might add abortion, what he is saying, right, very clearly, is that America always has 10% of its population enslaved. When the Dred Scott decision said that the black man has no rights, the white man is bound to respect, as we know, we can change the definition of what whiteness means. Right? And I'll just speak here as a white man. I don't often do this in left-wing situations, but I'm opposed to white supremacy not because it's white people involved. I'm opposed to the system that we traditionally call imperialism, and the idea that some people have rights and privileges that are not granted to all human beings. And the solution to that problem is called communism and socialism, and we should put it in our mouths. We should say it when we say, what is your politics? I am a socialist. I demand that we have health care for people, and it's not a demand that's negotiable with insurance companies. We will take your insurance companies, we will take the farms in this country, we will shut down the military apparatus in this country, and I'm tired of being told to stuff my anger back in my pants. It's got to end. When people say there is not a left in this country, no, I sat in meetings in this city where leading members of the left said we will not have an anti-war movement, we will not embarrass our Democratic Party candidates. That is a fact. And we don't need to say the names of these people, but God damn it, why are they still sitting in the same chairs in so-called anti-war coalitions when they endorse what this government has done in the supporting of Gaza and the siege that's happening right now? It is happening right now. And I want to put some gravel in my voice because all this thing that we're all on a coalition, let's just be clear one more time. Van is not a communist. He was 10 years ago. And just like him, when the Los Angeles riots and rebellions happened, I was there. It changed my life. A few years before that, I said it's over. I watched 1989. I watched Tiananmen Square. I watched the Berlin Wall. I said it's all over. Right? But then Los Angeles erupted, and the people who were told they didn't matter, they burned that city to the ground. And the next time that fight happens, I want it to be an organized fight that's progressive and not simply arson. I watched France burn this year, and God damn it, I'm with those people. That's it. We have a left, there's a fight to be had, and we should stop pussyfooting around about it.
A couple response to things, right? Like, so for me, just to go into definitions, right, I very specifically said the word progressive and not revolutionary. And I feel like sometimes that's confused, or we just like meld those all together, right? And there's a specific reason why I said there's some progressive forces within the Obama administration, right? Yossi Sargent example, I used him as an example because of his connection primarily to helping get other leftist progressive people that I know personally. A lot of people here know, like Jeff Chang, Anasa Troutman, a couple organizations up there that actually get some inside way of at least a meeting to really talk about something that's not even like on the table, right? Like a creativity stimulus and more talk about culture and like within its economic package, right? I think those are advances. And like, if we don't recognize that like those people were in positions that helped advance certain parts of movements and just say like, fuck it all, then, like I have a disagreement around that. The other thing, I'm sorry, I'm just going off like responses on this thing. But the other thing I also feel is, I just have to respond like, what Jed was just now saying, like, I agree with all that, right? And I agree, saying that very much with passion and fire, but how are we going to do that, Yeah, I mean, like, there is a question of, like, saying, like, yo, don't tell, like, we're just like, this is what we got to do, da. But then we never come up with how we're going to do that. And then, I think oftentimes we speak as if we have a strategy for revolution in this country, and we don't. None of us do. And so I think where a lot of things go back is maybe in each our own heads, we do have a certain strategy that we believe everybody else just, like, kind of agree with, and we're all talking past each other. And I just want to be like, upfront that none of us have a correct strategy to revolution in this country. My own orientation is like falling around sort of Gramsci's theory of hegemony, right? And developing a historic bloc, war maneuver, war position, and and how so, and then coming to a critical point where we have to make a break, right? And have the confrontation against the state. I don't have that totally mapped out, but that is how I kind of lead my political work. Due to my mentor, teacher, Harvey Goldberg on the end. That's joking. But, so like, I just say a little bit where I come from on that. I'm not saying I have a plan, but that is sort of my orientation. But I think a lot of times we do speak in these circles like there's a correct way. And then we use all these examples, and I don't believe in that.
So in this round of responses, as in like the entire panel, I've found myself being like, yeah. And then I'm like, no. And in particular, I mean, I want to try to draw out some of the thread of the last three comments, well, all of them in particular, but I think that communism and socialism, the ideas of the left, are absolutely relevant, and we need to put them on the map, and we need to sort of reclaim them and put them on the map front and center and emblazon them on our logos, and not in like a simplistic way, but we have to engage the war of ideas. And in engaging the war of ideas, we're going to open up the terrain on the ground to actually build organization and institutions. But that's the thing that's missing, and that's where the relevance question that I think that G was referencing is that there's the relevance of actual organizations and forms does not exist yet. And that's the pressing task. That's the intermediate task that I was referencing, is we have to figure out what is the shape and the form by which we bring together working class, oppressed folks to unabashedly say health care for everybody, no borders, Viva Palestina Libre, and that is independent from the existing political institution and terrain, but that understands the nuance of how to engage it.
I think as was put by one of the members of the panel, the message just came out of Van's own mouth or from his own publicist or whatever. When this first happened, my first question was he pushed or did he jump? And I think it's very clear from the letter that has come out in which he says the Obama administration is still great, I harbor no problems with it. He jumped. He acted as a team player. He knew that he was becoming a lightning rod within the healthcare debate and any other business that Obama was in, and he took one for the team. And I think we've got to take a good look at ourselves as a left. We still exist. I am not a necrophile. All these people are alive. We need to take a very hard look at just the very basic problem, I think, of the cult of personality that exists in society. This backlash did not start with Glenn Beck. This backlash existed. I mean, I remember working on stuff around the MTA bailout that happened. They were doing teabagging parties almost a year and a half ago, and they were sponsored by the Chambers of Commerce in New York City. It's only now that we're beginning to notice it because the people are out there. They're people. It's not just Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck stayed in New York, even though he proclaimed himself the grand marshal of this movement. And I think we really need to look at on the one hand, the problem of personalizing this issue around Glenn Beck, and not taking a structural look at who is involved on a mass level and what is it reflecting in our society. And two, on our own side, what infuriates me as a leftist is that we don't get angry until the celebrity gets hit. We are hitting now double-digit unemployment, and we only care when one person loses their job. That is sad. We are very slow to anger. We are very long, making very long speeches. We need to get angrier faster and make shorter speeches.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being at SDS around the time when you know, the Obama campaign was happening. And I remember fastly what happened there was that, yeah, there was a space opened up for doing student organizing. And there was a certain section of people that went into that space and immediately expunged everything radical they've ever said and even tried to red bait themselves so to get as far away as possible. That's what happened. So that space was dominated in that one sort of part of the movement by that type of politics. And I think this brings up a certain question in terms of sort of, well, you know, if we're dealing with sort of questions of transformation of society, of like transformation, creating a revolutionary people. I mean, there's a whole section, I mean, the majority of people that we need to address are going to be voting Democrat. That's fine. But how are we going to actually change that fundamental transformation? Who's going to be dictating, putting the politics in command and forward towards people to actually change that? When, you know, when we sort of talk about sort of the attack on Van, which I think we need to expose and so forth, I mean, there's some people that literally said we need to organize left forces to protect Van Jones. And that sort of sounds to me like I'm being sent in the cavalry charge for somebody else. That basically... himself. Right, exactly. I mean, all I'm trying to sort of point out is like, I think in a certain sense, maybe the right wing, even though it's radically polarizing into a really dangerous revanche-style politics, may be a misleading sort of character here. I mean, if the space is open, it's really about sort of questioning sort of how we're going to combat the hegemonic force of the Democratic Party in places like New York, in places across this country, because they have their own institutions, they have their own apparatuses. I mean, you were talking about ACORN and so forth. I mean, we have our institutions, we have our apparatuses, but they're not as powerful as them. And just pushing ourselves under that sort of regime of things, for me, I've only seen sort of historically, historically just go into one direction, and it's usually been like liquidation of radical revolutionary movements. So I want to sort of get my head around how are people proposing actually changing the hegemony by doing this. So.
Well, I'll keep it brief, but kind of grew up like old school, simple way. My mom raised me up in the church. One of the parables I remember was, you know a tree by its fruits. And I think the discussion of whether it's dead or whether it's dormant, that's besides the point. Let's bear some fruit, you know what I mean? To do that, we just need to focus more on what we need to create as opposed to what used to be deconstructed, because we deconstructed, reconstructed, deconstructed, back to reconstructing, and something else that we could deconstruct later many, 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 many times, if you follow all of that going around. But for me, it's like, well, why do we bear the fruit, if I can use that metaphor even more? The point is we're reaching out to people. You know, I've heard the changing of someone's objective reality. This is where you get to that whole meeting on where they're at. Some of what I hear, and you know, I moved up here from the South, so I'm always mindful of, I'm going back home, Montgomery, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia. How do I take what I do in organizing and the people and the connections that I make back to where I am, where my family still is? I know casual Glenn Beck listeners. I know people who listen to Glenn Beck and have their, you know, profile status updates on Twitter and on Facebook, quotes of Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh. But they love me to death. You know what I mean? But the question is, how do we create that? You know, how do we create that dinner table that's large enough to hold that canopy of folks who come at different political perspectives and then say, all right, scratch all that. We're going to change our reality for all of us here. And I guess that's where I want to pitch back to the panel is, how do we create the communities that we want to see in a way that engages everyone, even the people who right now perceives us as the opponent, as the ones that need to be eliminated. Because it's easy, because even I was like, yo, I'm ready to knuckle up, let's get to it. But then I was like, wait, does that mean I gotta punch out my uncle? You know, I gotta take out my friend who lives across the street from me, and you know, one of the people that I know and love who like is in my family? Or is it something different? Like, how do we change the dinner table dynamics?
Yeah, just one point here. I think Randy mentioned early on that he believed that the right is the main danger in this period. And I actually want to respectfully stake out a different position on that, you know, because they seem scary and all, right? But I mean, look at what we're facing. You know, we got 50,000 people in Washington, D.C. Like, we put on, you know, D.C. demos that are like 10 times that big, right? It's like what they've got is they got some, you know, cable TV commentators and stuff on their side and so on. It's like, my view is in fact that the right wing is in actuality a paper tiger, and they're not quite as dangerous as we think they are. The main danger right now is the imperialist ruling class. You know, look at all the trillions of dollars they're throwing at, you know, their own members to try to bail out the country from the economic crisis, rather than, you know, actually doing real work, you know, building the economics that, you know, bailing out Main Street and stuff, as the slogan goes, right? So to the extent that they are a danger, though, and I think, you know, obviously I'm here, I think it's an important thing to talk about. My interest is not so much in figuring out how we're going to defend ourselves, but how we're going to counterattack, because I think we can defeat them without too much trouble.
Lou Dobbs began his attacks on Cynthia McKinney 7 years ago, right? But the minute Cynthia actually was held accountable to her own people and said, I'm leaving this Democratic Party because I see what they're doing, the people didn't have Cynthia's back. And I was talking to her today because of her recent trip with M1 to Gaza. So I'm thinking what you said about how do we get people in the streets. Let me tell you, I was part of the Million Man March Local Organizing Committee. In 1996. 13 years ago, Minister Louis Farrakhan, I see you, let me finish up, yeah, okay. Over 1.5 million, mostly black people, many women who said, I'm going, I was one of those women, on the Capitol Mall. And how did the Nation of Islam do it? They took 2 years, set up a local organizing committee in every state, and self-determined. They never took one white dollar. And I mean white dollar in cap nonprofit money, whether it's run by the 21st Century Foundation, run by black people, wherever. So we've done it before in terms of how do we get the masses in the streets. I think where we're failing right now is to be all worried about just Glenn Beck and Lou Dobbs, not to have a campaign against them, but really, we still got to piggyback on the Obama administration and said, the minute he accepted Van's resignation, he allowed Fox News to win. And the minute he allowed Fox News to win, he gave every racist in this country the opportunity to take off their fucking hoods and now be racist for real. And we have to be very clear that's the assessment. Where I want to move forward, I'm moving forward in organizations that say I'm about racial justice. I am no longer personally participating in organizations where particularly women of color have to be like, hey, hi, can I say something? Can I be part of the leadership? You know, whatever. But really, I think we have to now go back to a racial justice movement in this country, because that's essentially what we've seen in the 60s, the 50s. The first communists that come out is W.E.B. Du Bois in this country. And the interesting battle is not going to be me and battling some white folks. The battle is going to be within my own community of people who are not progressive, who are not radical. It's going to be the battle of the Puerto Ricans that are jumping the Mexicans all over the Bronx now because they feel they're losing political power. And You know, so in terms of electoral politics, as Richie Perez, and I'll end with this, Richie Perez, you know, I always feel that when Richie passed away, our movement stopped for some reason. I don't know what the hell happened, but because Richie had innate ability to assess a situation and figure out how to have a strategy on the inside and outside. And before Richie passed away, he kept saying, never forget why they attacked us. This group of small Puerto Ricans, this small group of Black Panthers, this small group of Republic of New Africa, the entire weight of the U.S. government attacked them for a reason. But we have some victories we can always claim. Vieques is a victory. The Million Man March forced Clinton at some level to let out those Puerto Rican political prisoners, because what people don't know is that when Minister Farrakhan put out his agenda, the freedom of political prisoners, particularly Puerto Rican and New Africans, was on the agenda. And I think we just need to get back to a place. Because this really helps me figure out what are the objective, subjective conditions on the ground. I'm in the South Bronx. And I know now that apparently the African-American male unemployment rate in the United States has now hit 31%, according to the Urban League. So I think we take all the kind of lessons. I feel like everybody gave me a lesson that I can build with. But one of the things I'm going to be involved with, you guys can look it up, email me, is we started last week the Black is Back Coalition. Because what we realized, and after talking about particularly Cindy Sheehan, that if Black and Latino people don't step up and fight Obama, it doesn't give the opportunity for white anti-imperialists to feel that they can join the struggle. So it's called the Black is Back Coalition. Hit me up, and that's what I'm going to be rolling with. Anything that doesn't have racial justice and women in the front, I'm not fucking with it anymore, because it's obviously a reason why we can't get movement really working or moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'm learning from this panel is that a lot of us are in agreement about sort of assessing the situation, but the question is about the how and what Saulo brought up in terms of this idea of, you know, what does this independent work actually mean and signify? And I think that that's the ultimate question that I'm struggling with. You know, as someone who's been working in community organizing and sort of a reformist organization, I want to know how is it that I can reclaim that and radicalize it, you know? How can we radicalize the environmental justice movement, the climate change movement? How can we make sure that the most radical demands around healthcare are there front and center, and around the other issues that we believe in? I think that, you know, that's sort of a temporary strategy to getting into the long-term strategy. And I think that what we sometimes ignore is the fact that the people, at least the people that are within our communities, the ones that end up kind of taking leadership and taking power, a lot of times come from a lot of these organizations, nonprofit organizations that exist that are doing work. And when mass movements begin to prevail, like things like the LA riots, these people become at the forefront in terms of leadership because they have the capability in terms of community organizing, in terms of public speaking, and they're comfortable and they can build upon these roles and teach other people and train other people. And so it's something that I think we need to work with and build and not ignore.
Somebody who I often disagree with, Rebecca Solnit, wrote a really interesting piece about Detroit and about how the left was always demanding people rebuild Detroit, bring back the industry, and talk about the Diego Rivera murals and all the fetishization of the machines. And it's not coming back, people. And one of the things I think happened is we lost our concentration on mutual aid and respect amongst people and meeting people's needs. But there's a key thing, and that is, broadly speaking, without a people's army, the people have nothing. If we do not have our own, and by independent I mean antagonistic to the existing state apparatus and state of affairs, if we do not have our own force, power is always its own gravity, and we will always be chumped by them, every single time. If we advance leaders who go into that system, they will cut and run, because it will be, and that's what it means, that even someone who renounced their former left-wing past and embraced capitalism and is an evangelist for it, even that person doesn't have a place at their table. It's just remarkable while a murderer like Rahm Emanuel, who served in the Israeli army, I'm sorry, I just want to get real, I'm not in a coalition with those motherfuckers. And part of, it's funny, as someone who does claim the word communist and would argue that every socialist in this room should use that term when they identify themselves, at the very least. Communism is the specter. It's very important we understand this. There's a reason we can't say that word. It's because it's the answer to our problems. Communism is the brotherhood of all people. When they say a healthcare problem, well, yeah, here's the problem. Shut down the insurance companies and we're going to socialize medicine. Well, that's off the table. Obama already said that. So now we have to do all these jury-rig half-ass solutions that aren't going to make anyone happy, that let the right sabotage, and once again, we'll lose. So part of it is without being able to fill that lacuna, that empty space. That's why they suppress communism. That's why they make us apologize every time we open our mouths. You know, FDR and Winston Churchill called Palestinian people dogs. He said, I don't care how long the dog has lied in the manger, they have no right to their land. Yet liberals and conservatives never have to apologize for that. FDR doesn't have to apologize for Jim Crow, but we have to apologize for what Joseph Stalin did. Well, I haven't killed anyone. All I've done is fight for free speech and expanding the realm of possibility, and we should claim our movements and fight for them frontally. The only way to respond to anti-communism is to jump on their tables and say, we'll bury you. Because if you hem and you haw, they will roll right over us. Right over us. And if we go back to communities and tell young people that they just need a jobs program, they know better. See, that's part of the thing, is I think that when we claim that we're going to be meeting people's needs, they just think we're another poverty pimp constituency hustler. And they know exactly what that is because they've seen it their whole lives. And there's no reason for us to basically cut ourselves off at the knee. Our one great power is meeting the need that this society can't meet. And that's better than hope.
I'm gonna end this off kind of on the polarizing tip. Just so I don't know, I can't I'll end up all happy. I guess I'm one of the main proponents of the left is dead, and I just want to define that because people seem to take that and run with it. And when I mean the left is dead, I mean there's no force in this country or in the U.S. context that has effect on societal scale. And if anyone still wants to disagree with me on that, you're just simply arguing from vanity. And we could talk about that after the panel or whatever. I'll identify you in the category of crazy if you still think that's different. That's me personally. The next thing I want to say, I don't agree with an orientation of losing our way to revolution, right? There seems to be a certain orientation within different sectors on our side of the way we're going to win is that we engage people in struggle, they lose, and then they become disillusioned with the capitalist system, and then one day they're gonna have that revolutionary break in consciousness. I disagree with that. I have to very emphatically disagree with that. I don't see that going anywhere. Another, and just a final example, right? I really do want to address, no one really gives concrete examples of independent work, right? I think we're all trying to figure that out, but what are some things that are happening? I wish some of my friends were here from Boston. They had to leave early. But some of my friends that was here, they're engaged. They was members of the Obama, Lynn is a town in Massachusetts. They was part of the Lynn Obama group. And they identify as very clearly like communists. They involved in that. They helped with the election and all that, and they struggled with people. And when the election was over and when the Obama campaign merged into the OFA, Organized for America, that group on its own decidedly was saying, like, we don't want to be down with the Democrats. And they went independent, right? And so now they do things around foreclosures in Massachusetts. But the thing I use that as an example is taking what some of the organized initiatives that came out of the Obama wave and how that goes beyond that. Right? And I don't think my friends would have been able to have any structural influence in that group if they didn't engage with them from beginning to end. So that's one example. Another example is on Fulton Street. There is the business what is it, the bid? Business Improvement District. The new bid that's coming up is basically was shutting out the black-owned businesses. There's an anti-bid coalition going on, but a lot of them use the imagery from the Obama campaign to invigorate their own struggle, right? Those are just some concrete examples of independent, like autonomous independent force that's coming up that's probably abstinary left force. And I'm done.
Yeah, so again, I just want to acknowledge that this has been a really, really important dialogue and discussion, as other folks have said. I also want to self-reflect on what G was talking about in terms of the tone, because I realized, especially as I was giving my presentation, that I was like in like a wild man rant, and a white wild man rant, and a bald wild.
I unite with that rant.
But I appreciate that. And part of that is, you know, and I agree, this is, you know, it's time for us to stop getting mad. Like, you know, the upsurge, you know, of the extreme radical right in this country, I mean, has always, I mean, the extreme radical right has always been present. And it's, you know, right-wing populism has been building since, you know, 2001 and gathering strength. I think that to call it a paper tiger, because that point was raised, and I respect the respectful disagreement, I think that we got to look at it at different levels. You want to look at like a Sheriff Arpaio in Arizona, that's not a paper tiger. That's a motherfucker who's killing people on the border. And he's putting them in shackles and he's driving them around. So there's at that level. And then I think that then there's the level of the right, which is basically the last 30 years of the neoliberal regime and policy. And then finally there's the right of ideology. So I think that, at least for me, what happens is if we don't engage the fight and to respond in some ways to what the brother was acknowledging, it's not about necessarily going out and clunking your dear uncle in the South, but it's about it's about fighting the ideological battle. And I think some good examples that have come up have been, like, for example, the Vermont Workers Center did this amazing year-long work around healthcare where they actually built the base, they developed the consciousness. When the teabaggers came, they were able to subdue it because they...
I'm sorry, it's just the name.
I know. Word, I'm with you. You know, they were able to actually do some, you know, ideological jujitsu with the people in the room. And the thing that I also want, like, for me, when we talk about the question of form, this is a protracted struggle, but it's, to me, it's scale, consciousness, which is direly absent, relevance, and resources. Those are the things that are going to lead us towards power in a form that's going to actually make a difference.
On that note.